Right, this is our short course on emotional mastery. Now, what I'm going to cover here is going to be some fundamental principles that are essential for managing your emotional state and being a deliberate creator in your life. We use other techniques like EFT and releasing to help us release the negative emotional charge on old emotional wounds and things that are negatively programmed into us, traumas, things like that. But I really want you to understand the vibrational nature of our emotions. It is so incredibly important. Many people are going through life in a reactionary state. They have old conditioning that does not serve them. They have old pains, old negative beliefs, and they're really just sort of bumping around through life, being triggered by their external circumstances. They're not being at cause in their own life. When we're doing work around creation, and what I'm talking about here can sometimes be referred to as manifestation, creating deliberately with intention in your life. As a business owner, you are setting goals for yourself and you are creating success and money and products and services. You are doing your work in the world. That is a process of creation. Everything that you have in your life, the physical, tangible things, the home that you're in, the vehicle that you drive, your spouse, your children, whatever those things are that appear to be physical, manifested things from outside of you, how are you creating those things? Emotion plays an important part in the creation process. Emotion is like the fuel that allows the creation process to occur. And that's why you'll oftentimes hear when people are talking about visualization or manifestation, they are saying you've got to put emotion into it. And if you've ever done any work with me individually, or if you've watched a lot of the other content within the Inner Game Academy, you hear me oftentimes instructing you to feel. How do you want to feel? How does it feel in your body to be more confident, to be more empowered, to have what you want? How do you want to feel? And that is very intentional. That's not just because I'm a touchy-feely person, okay? Anyone who is close to me knows that I tend to actually not be very touchy and feely. And yet, I understand this at a much deeper level than just purely conceptual. But we're going to start with the conceptual right now because you need a foundational understanding. And that foundational understanding is then going to build into real mastery. Okay. So let's start with a really important concept. And I am going to see if I can screen share here. This is the Scale of Consciousness by Dr. David Hawkins. If you have not read his book, Power versus Force, I highly recommend it, especially if you consider yourself to be very intellectual and you need a lot of data. He has essentially, through his body of work, his research, identified the vibrational spectrum of our emotions. So that's what we have right here. And I know this picture is a little low resolution, so I apologize if it's hard to read this, but I'm going to go through it with you. So you'll notice that at the very bottom here is shame, one of the lowest vibrations that we can experience. When you feel guilt and shame, you are not in a good state. And I want to really emphasize here that there is no value in staying in shame. You cannot undo the thing that you've done wrong by staying in a state of shame, guilt. The only way that you can begin to make right what you've done wrong is by raising your vibration, allowing yourself to learn and grow and become a better person from that experience. In alchemy, we would call that transmutation, when you can transmute that lower vibrational energy that we would put the label of guilt or shame on, and you can learn from that. You can become a better person. Now you are able to add value because of that experience. You have become wiser, you have grown, you have released old patterns that are destructive, that do not serve you, that do not help others, okay? But you cannot rise up from that as long as you're holding on to those lower vibrational states. Now, up from guilt is apathy. So this is, again, a very, very toxic vibration to be in. And we experience it in those deep, unpleasant moments when things don't go your way, when you have tried and tried and tried and failed, and there is a part of you that has just given up. You're not going to be creating significant transformation within yourself or contributing in a meaningful way from a low vibration like apathy. And I'm just going to point out here that whoever created this image, they put these two terms here: contracted and expanded. And that's another thing that oftentimes I will reference when we are doing different types of work. A contracted state, you can feel it. You feel constricted. You feel those heavier vibrational energies, those heavier emotions, the grief, the fear, the anger, right? And it feels different physically to be experiencing those emotions than to be in an expanded, or I usually use the word expansive state. So when you are in acceptance, love, joy, peace, you feel more expansive. Your energy field is literally more expansive. And there's some fascinating work that's been done on documenting this by the Heart Math Institute. So again, if you are an analytical person who loves to see the hard data, there is plenty of hard data out here. So we want to always be working our way up this emotional vibrational scale. We are able to create a beautiful life from these expansive, expanded energies. Now, these little numbers here, this is his scale where he's measured these things, he's calibrated these different frequencies, and then he has associated a numerical value with how they test. It's kind of like a thermometer. You can kind of see with numbers the representation of where you are on that vibrational spectrum. So we go from shame, which is 20, all the way up to enlightenment, which is 700 plus. And I believe in his book, he actually references 700 up to 1,000. So I believe his top level number is actually 1,000, which it does not say on this image. But now what I want to really, really instill within you is that when we are moving through the vibrations, we typically are not taking quantum leaps. Okay. So if you're feeling depressed, which would be down in grief or apathy, you're not going to immediately jump up the vibrational scale to peace and joy, right? That's a really big vibrational variance. So typically what we're always reaching for is to release those heavier emotions, and that's going to allow us to ascend up the vibrational scale. So usually what we'll feel then is when we release on those lower vibrations, we'll move up into a sense of relief. Okay. So one thing I'll point out here is that anger is higher than fear. Anger is higher than apathy and grief. So if you've experienced bouts of depression, it's not uncommon to go through this sort of cycle of you're way down in depression, very, very low vibration. And when you've processed some of that, you'll move up into anger and you'll feel very angry. That is a natural progression. Now, what happens for a lot of people is then, because they haven't properly released on those emotional wounds and those root causes of the depression, they will start to actually feel guilty about feeling the anger. They haven't truly, fully, and completely resolved the cause of the depression. And so they end up going from anger back down into depression. And so some people will just bounce back and forth between those two lower vibrational states with an occasional feeling of more of like a neutral state. So for some people, literally neutrality here at 250 is about as high as they might ever get. And even then, that's not their baseline. That's not their set point. Their set point might be actually down in pride or in anger or in desire. Okay. And why would desire be here? I actually use the word desire in a positive context. When I'm referring to desire, I'm referring to a heartfelt desire, which is really our sort of inner spiritual guidance calling us towards something. Where he's referring to desire is coming from that place of lack. So when you desire something and you're actually more focused on not having it, you feel the vibration of lack. So I would almost prefer if on his scale, he would say desire / lack, indicating what he's actually referring to from that lower vibrational perspective. Because certainly you can desire something and be in a higher vibrational state and create beautiful, wonderful things, okay? But overall, what I love about this model is it helps us to visualize, to see a representation of the different processes taking place within us when we're feeling these different emotions, and a representation of where they are in terms of true peace, true, a heightened state of consciousness. And not everybody's goal is to become enlightened. It's not every soul's mission, I don't think, right? Regardless of what your beliefs are, you can probably, put that into some kind of context that feels right to you. But what I found is that most people do crave those higher vibrational states. Inherently, we know that life should be good for us, that love is something that everyone is entitled to. So I'm going to switch to another graphic here, and this is from Abraham-Hicks. Now, this again is another representation of this sort of emotional vibrational scale. And you'll see again, right? We're way down here, fear, grief, depression, despair, very low. And notice their scale is different here. So if you cannot get too confused by the number scale that they used, and just focus on the fact that we have fear, grief, depression, and despair on one end of the vibration spectrum, appreciation, freedom, and love at the polar opposite end of the vibrational spectrum. And again, we just simply want to remember that when you're feeling these lower vibrations, insecurity, guilt, jealousy, hatred, revenge, anger, right? Whatever the negative feelings are that you're experiencing, that you don't typically jump right from there all the way up into enthusiasm or passion or appreciation, okay? So where I want you to focus your attention now is the principle of moving yourself up that vibrational scale, that you have the ability through the different tools and techniques that are available to you inside of the Academy to release the negative emotional charge that you're experiencing. These things we love to put labels on, right? So fear is just a label that we give for a feeling, an experience that we have. Love is a label for a feeling, an experience we have. And those different feelings have these different vibrations. So the vibration of fear, we feel it in a different part of our body than we feel the vibration of love. And the way that fear feels in our body is different than the way that the vibration of love feels in our body. And when something doesn't feel good, that is indicating that you are focusing on or thinking about or expecting something you don't want. Or like I use the example of desire and lack, when you are feeling passionate about what you are creating, you're filled up, you're expansive. If you are focused on not having what you want, then you're on the other end of that vibrational spectrum, and you're in the vibration of lack, which is a very low vibration, and it feels very constricting and contracting. So we want to identify, right, be mindful, identify those negative vibrations, realize what's taking place within us is where we're focused. That's an indication of our beliefs and our expectations. We are able to then release those feelings, releasing the energy. Remember, energy typically comes up and flows through, so it tends to come out in an upward motion. When we release energy, which we are always doing each and every day throughout the day, unless we're repressing because we have some stuck energy, when we choose to release and let go of those lower vibrational feelings, we're naturally going to move up the vibrational scale into a more empowering emotional state. And if you remember that in this vibrational universe that we live in, we are creating matching experiences to our predominant vibrational states. And in some cases, that's sort of what I call a mixed bag, right? So sometimes you have certain areas of your life where you have a lot of good, positive, and empowering beliefs. And so you're predominantly creating positive things in your life, but there are going to be other areas of your life where you have some limiting, disempowering beliefs. And so you're also creating some less than desirable things. When you notice you are experiencing negative emotion, that is your indicator that on that subject where you are focusing your attention, whether it's conscious or subconscious, you are focusing on what you don't want or not having what you do want, a lack, right? That's the time where now you're going to use some of the different processes that you learned here inside of the academy, or if you have other tools that work well for you, you're going to release those lower vibrational feelings, and it's naturally going to move you up the vibrational scale. We ultimately always want to be creating our life from that higher vibrational place because we want more of the good. So if you want to create more money, and you're constantly feeling negative emotions associated with money, you're probably not going to create a delightful, abundant reality for yourself. So you've got to clean up that energy, and you now have to practice associating money and the accumulation of money with those positive vibrations. So you'll oftentimes hear me say, how would you prefer to feel? So how would you prefer to feel as you're creating more money in your business? How do you want that to feel? And you'll notice that inherently you're going to gravitate towards those higher vibrational emotions. Okay. So this again is sort of the high level overview for anyone who is new to this concept of emotion and energy and the vibration associated with our emotions. Now, if you have been predominantly in some of those lower vibrational states, if you're more pessimistic by nature, you've conditioned that into yourself, it's going to take some time for you to overwrite that old subconscious programming. So we're just reaching for some relief, letting go of some of those old beliefs, letting go of the negative emotional charge on your old beliefs and expectations. And when you release and let go of some of that heavier, denser, lower vibrational energy, now you're able to sort of pivot your focus and ask yourself, how would I prefer to feel? When you ask yourself that question, you're naturally going to reach for a better feeling thought. So you may say, I prefer to feel optimistic. I prefer to feel calm and peaceful. And when your mind goes to that place, you're actually manufacturing that feeling. You're creating it. You're creating the feeling and you're changing your vibration. And when you do this over and over and over again, you're creating new pathways, new neural pathways for this new empowering thought process, this tendency to be in the vibration of optimism or inner peace or whatever it is that you keep creating over and over and over again. So how do we create habits? How do we create these patterns? How do we create a new vibrational set point for ourselves? If your old vibrational set point was pessimism, and we acknowledge that that's not serving you, and you know in your heart that you would love to create a new dominant set point that is much higher vibrational than that, like being enthusiastic about life, loving life. You've got to practice that feeling. And when you're triggered and you're feeling the negative emotion, you have to release that energy first. You just pull it up, let it come up, let it pass through, right? Do the releasing process, release and let it go. If there is a belief that needs to be addressed, you're going to want to do that. You're going to want to neutralize the negative emotional charge on that old belief. Then you can pivot. How would I prefer to feel? I'd prefer to feel passionate about my life. And then you get into that vibrational state. Really think about it. Imagine yourself feeling that way. Imagine yourself going through your day feeling that empowering, positive feeling. The more you do it, the more neural pathways you create, the more it becomes subconscious, and you will begin to automatically default to being that way more of the time. So I'm going to end this video here. I sincerely hope that it put a few things into perspective for you, and you understand a little bit more how important it is to acknowledge your feelings, release and let go of those heavy emotions, and little by little move yourself up that vibrational scale with intention, creating a new vibrational set point that is far more empowering for you, so that you can create everything you want in your life.